Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 common misconceptions about food safety. Most people at some point in their life have got some bacteria inside them, whether from restaurant food or a grocery store, which caused them to claim later that they had food poisoning. There are multiple nasty bacteria that can cause this, and there are many misconceptions about how they end up in our food, and what the best ways to avoid them are. To be forewarned is to be forearmed, so here are several misconceptions about food safety and the practices involved that can leave us satisfied or ruin our day with stomach-churning nastiness. Number 10. Eggs need to be kept refrigerated. Something that might seem strange to Americans is that in Europe we don't keep our eggs in the refrigerator. Typically, they are kept at room temperature out in the open. This may seem particularly jarring to Americans who are used to the idea that eggs must be kept refrigerated at all times in order to keep them safe from bacteria like salmonella. In fact, despite all the safety precautions, salmonella outbreaks still do occasionally happen. However, despite the rest of the world usually not opting to refrigerate their eggs, they don't have any major salmonella issues. The reason for this isn't that the US or Europe have different eggs from each other, it actually comes down to the washing process, or rather the lack thereof. In the United States, eggs are usually vigorously washed in an attempt to keep them free from bacteria. This actually removes a natural coating that gives them an incredible protection from bacteria all on its own. Proponents of washing argue that you remove any dangerous bacteria with the original washing and can keep them safe with refrigeration, while those who don't wash them argue that it keeps them safe from bacteria just fine that way. This doesn't necessarily mean there is anything wrong with washing eggs, but there is also no reason to freak out if you're in another country and you see them unrefrigerated. Number 9. The expiration labels on your food are indicative of the product's safety. Many people go through their refrigerator and pantry every week or month looking for anything that has passed its expiration date. This is followed by throwing most of it in the garbage and then running to the store to replace all of those things that are now rotting away. Many people are under the impression that these labels are actually when the food starts to expire and is no longer safe to eat. This is an incredibly wasteful misunderstanding and is something the food companies have no desire to dispel. If you throw it out before you finish it, you go buy more and they make more profit. Now, while the food companies aren't trying to dispel the misconception, they aren't exactly lying either. The labels usually give a date as to when the product is best by, because it's really about the appearance of freshness. These dates are decided by the company's food scientists and marketing experts as the point at which the food starts to deteriorate past how they want it to appear and taste to the consumer. It may be perfectly safe to eat, but they have their brand to consider, and they want everyone to have a consistent experience with their product. Hence, companies will hint that you should throw the food out and buy more when it no longer fits their quality standards. Number 8. Faking allergies at restaurants is not harmful and gets you what you want quicker. In recent days, it has become quite common for many people to go to restaurants and fake allergies. For example, these people will tell the server that they are allergic to onions when the truth is that they really just don't like eating them, and they figure that if they say they're allergic, there's going to be less of a chance of them actually getting the onions anyway. Further, if they do get the onions, there's probably a better chance they can send it back and get it remade, so allergy fakers think they're saving themselves both money and time. There are even some people online who recommend that others do this, suggesting that it doesn't hurt anyone and is basically a win-win for everyone. However, the truth is that not only can it be harmful to allergy sufferers, but it doesn't really help the faker either. While it can be an inconvenience to have to send back a dish because it has something you really don't like on it, telling them you have an allergy will start an incredibly complicated process in the kitchen that is very time-consuming. This process is done rigorously by anyone working in any kitchen you'd want to order food from, and it will slow down service for literally everyone in the restaurant. This is because cross-contaminants, possible allergens that could sneak in from other restaurant tools, have to be carefully accounted for, which can lead to an incredible amount of cleaning and scrubbing just for one dish. This epidemic of fakers has led some chefs to caution that it is burning out some kitchens and making them not spend as much time on the process as they should because it happens so much. This is bad news for real allergy sufferers who will be more than inconvenienced if they eat the wrong ingredient, making fakers very selfish. Number 7. Making workers wear gloves keeps your food protected from germs. Many people think of gloves as the firewall that protects them from people working at a restaurant and stops them inadvertently giving them food poisoning. Some customers will even go so far as to ask especially for gloves to be used, thinking that it will ensure that they aren't spending half the day in the bathroom. However, the truth is that gloves are really only as good as the food safety habits of those using them. They can certainly be very useful if a chef or worker cuts their hand and needs to keep it from infecting food, but in normal situations, many chefs dislike them. They can also be problematic because they can lead to a false sense of security. Chefs have reported seeing people in the kitchen who are wearing gloves, scratching various parts of their body, and not immediately washing their hands and switching the gloves afterwards, the only safe thing to do in that case. Chefs have also witnessed people using gloves but still causing cross-contamination anyway just because of poor food safety practices. This can be especially dangerous when working with various raw meats. Gloves can be a useful tool, but they are only helpful if the person is conscientious about safety in the first place. Number 6. Produce is the least dangerous fresh food in your grocery store. Produce is something that immediately evokes freshness and goodness in our minds. It is also for that reason the first thing that grocery stores direct us to as soon as we walk in the door. Most of us consider it as the healthiest option available and rarely consider it as a threat to our safety. In fact, in a scientific survey, it was found that most Americans considered meat and other similar products a serious possible danger to health, but the vast majority did not consider disease from produce to be a serious issue worth worrying about. However, according to experts, more disease outbreaks by far have actually been linked to produce than any form of meat products. Meat is usually thoroughly cooked, and vegetables are often eaten raw. Also, the washing process most people go through with their produce is fairly cursory, and if the food was infected with certain bacteria, a quick wash-off will certainly not be enough to keep you protected. Depending on the type of disease you are worried about, using your produce in thoroughly cooked foods can ensure you are safe, but not all potentially harmful bacteria can be destroyed by cooking either. If you're going to eat raw produce, it's best to wash it as thoroughly as possible. Number 5. Washing meat and poultry is a good way to keep your kitchen safe. An old wives' tale that is still commonly passed around is that you should wash your meat or poultry before cooking it in order to keep it properly clean. Many people to this day follow this for safety reasons or just plain habits, and probably feel that at the very least all they are doing is adding a little work to the process, and many people don't mind that possibility if it means less chance of getting sick. However, washing your meat or poultry, according to researchers, is actually much more dangerous than simply cooking it properly. If you wash your uncooked meat, especially chicken, you can easily spread salmonella or other bacteria all over your kitchen, making it very likely you or someone in your family will touch it and get sick. On the other hand, cooking the chicken properly and ensuring that it reaches a temperature of 165 degrees at all points using a calibrated meat thermometer will effectively kill off all dangerous bacteria completely, and if you put it straight in the pan, you can have much less of a risk of causing the spread of dangerous bacteria. While some may stick with it, thinking they can manage to keep the germs from spreading with cleaning, there is no point at all. You don't get any benefit from washing your meat. Cooking sufficiently will be more than enough to prevent illness. Number 4. The microwaves from your microwave safely kill all bacteria. Microwaves are one of the most misunderstood cooking devices in the world. Some people refuse to use them because they are afraid that their food will be contaminated with dangerous levels of radiation, and others think it does something strange to somehow mutate the food. Most people don't understand that microwaves use a different kind of microwave than the one they are thinking of. These misconceptions have also led some people to think that they don't need to get their food to a proper temperature when they're cooking in a microwave because the radiation will kill anything dangerous. This is an erroneous assumption and could lead to dangerous food poisoning. All microwaves can do is make your food hotter. The heat itself is the only thing killing germs here, and microwaves are actually notorious for cooking food extremely unevenly. Experts actually recommend using food thermometers and checking various spots on the food when using a microwave in order to avoid you getting any food poisoning issues. Most microwave meals now contain similar instructions for their own legal protection and to avoid consumer complaints. The truth is that microwaves are perfectly safe in terms of radiation, but they are not a magic box that will destroy all bacteria. Number 3. You are rolling the dice with your fate when you eat uncooked sushi. When many Americans are first introduced to sushi, they think of it as raw fish, and many people are concerned that what they are eating is not safe. Some Americans, even after eating it for a while, seem to have a misunderstanding that they are doing something fairly dangerous by eating uncooked fish. This has made it popular, especially among young people who like to latch on to anything that may be considered reckless, but the truth is that the process for serving and preparing sushi is actually both regulated and quite safe. The truth is that unless fish has first been put through a deep freeze in order to kill all possible parasites within the fish, it is illegal to serve. Now, like all rules though, it doesn't mean it's perfectly followed. Sometimes there have been concerns that a restaurant will think the deep freeze has really been taken care of when the wholesaler was leaving it to the restaurant to take care of. However, truly conscientious restaurant owners will only accept fish that is already in a deep frozen state, and that restaurant will also have a proper freezer storage facility to maintain it at a safe temperature regardless. Some of these sushi shop owners have reported hardly being able to tell a difference between formerly frozen and fresh sushi themselves, showing that shop owners can have safe food without their customers knowing the difference. Number 2. The misting machines in the produce section of the store are there for food safety. Many people are under the impression that the misting machines in the produce section that constantly spray water on the vegetables are there to keep the food clean and protect it from germs, but this is not the point at all. To actually stand a chance of removing germ buildup, it would need to be a vigorous wash. The truth is that the machines are there for two other distinct reasons, and both are there to maximize the profitability of the fresh produce. The first is that it simply makes the produce look a lot better, which makes people more likely to buy it. Produce can also dry out while sitting for a long time, and spraying it with water can help keep it rehydrated and fresh for when you buy it. These misting machines, while nice, can actually counterintuitively be dangerous for people in terms of safety. Years ago, some misting machines from a grocery store produce section were linked to an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease. It was spreading partly by the actual water vapor in the air. This caused some stores to suspend their use altogether, while other stores made sure their machines were kept properly clean. This just shows that any machine that interacts with food, even if it doesn't come into direct contact with people, needs to be cleaned and inspected regularly to prevent outbreaks of serious diseases. Number 1. It is dangerous to use a wooden cutting board for meat because of bacterial buildup. There has been a lot of advice around internet cooking circles about cutting boards and what is the proper board to use for each particular job. The debate, as many on the internet go, has become quite contentious and focuses on the unique perspectives of wooden cutting boards. While all chefs will say that you should have separate boards for different tasks due to cross-contamination, many believe that wooden cutting boards are either the best or the worst thing ever when it comes to handling raw meat. The reasoning behind one side is the long-believed claim that wood has natural antibacterial properties. This, of course, led many chefs to believe that wooden cutting boards were therefore perfect for dealing with any kind of poultry or similar products. However, this has been debunked, and a new movement in the opposite direction has given rise to the suggestion that wooden cutting boards are actually dangerous. They claim that the grains within the wood can hold on to bacteria for hours, trapping them before they finally die. While there is some truth to this, since the bacteria are trapped in the wood, they actually cannot transfer to the food, and due to their isolation, they don't live particularly long. Essentially, both sides are over-exaggerating their cause. Wooden cutting boards can be safe for any food, but just like with all food-related tools, this is only the case if they are properly cleaned and maintained. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.